this computer. Okay, so we're at the Yoga Sutras, and we're going to start discussion from page 70. So let me put that on here. Starting on page 70. That's where you'll find the discussion on abhyasa, these two terms, abhyasa and vairagya. And I know that Manny mentioned it one class before. That is a theme that they use, because it's basically abhyasa means, well, it means, okay, in this sense, it means devotional practice, but in the way that he was using it in their class, it was a letting go or detachment. Actually, specifically, vairagya is the word for detachment, but they're discussed together. So abhyasa is devotional practice, meaning that your practice is aimed at a higher purpose. So and specifically, it's dedication to God or a higher power, and it's that feeling of what I describe it as. It's a feeling of reverence and respect for the eternal part of us. So it's bringing in that element of what's spirit or what's everlasting, or the part of us that doesn't change, that essential deeper part of us. So how do we do that? How do we practice with that quality of this devotion or reverence or respect? Usually it's something that we believe in, right? If you think of the word devotion, what are we devoted to? What are we committed to? It's something that's important to us. So how do we bring that quality into this practice where we move our body into different poses and we do these breathing and we flow or we hold poses? How do we translate that into a feeling of devotion? So the way that I experience it is that our spirit and our physical bodies are linked. So anytime you are moving with attention and respect for your physical body, it just automatically is a spiritual experience, because we are spiritual beings. So also somatics is that function of the peripheral nervous system that's conscious, where we receive input from the body and we send out signals to move. So that's the whole somatic nervous system. The somatics of it means that if you move a certain way, it'll bring out certain feelings. And have you ever, so well, before we go to that part, I'm going to show you this. This is a good little website that talks about just the somatic nervous system. So you receive input from your hand, that message goes to your sensory portion of your brain. The sensory portion of the brain sends a message to the motor control that sends the message back to the hand to either toss the ball or hold on to the ball or catch the ball, whatever it is you're trying to do, right? So there's a sensory input and then movement control. So if you want to go back to this, it has all these different, if you're interested in that, all these different descriptions of the anatomy of the somatic system. But what I want to go ahead and get into is the that idea that how we move affects how we feel, or our bodies can affect our mind. Have you seen this TED Talk? Let's see. See if I can start it. It's about the
ripple effects and may lead to in some areas.
East Africa's
Hearing on the edge of
things. People are bringing their true self.
So it's about the power move. Have you seen this TED Talk before, Amanda? No? Okay. Good. I'm glad.
But brilliant trick to heat your home in 90 seconds and save thousands of dollars on your heating bill this winter.
Okay.
So I want to start by offering you a free no-tech life hack. And all it requires of you is this, that you change your posture for 2 minutes. But before I give it away, I want to ask you to right now do a little audit of your body and what you're doing with your body. So how many of you are sort of making yourselves smaller? Maybe you're hunching, crossing your legs, maybe wrapping your ankles. Sometimes we hold on to our arms like this. Sometimes we spread out. I see you. So I want you to pay attention to what you're doing right now. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes. And I'm hoping that if you sort of learn to tweak this a little bit, it could significantly change the way your life unfolds. So we're really fascinated with body language, and we're particularly interested in other people's body language. You know, we're interested in, like, you know, an awkward interaction or a smile or a contemptuous glance or maybe a very awkward wink, or maybe even something like a handshake.
Here they are arriving at number 10, and look at this lucky policeman gets to shake hands with the President of the United States. Oh, and here comes the Prime Minister of it. No.
So a handshake or the lack of a handshake can have us talking for weeks and weeks and weeks, even the BBC and the New York Times. So obviously, when we think about nonverbal behavior or body language, but we call it nonverbals as social scientists, it's language. So we think about communication. When we think about communication, we think about interactions. So what is your body language communicating to me? What's mine communicating to you? And there's a lot of reason to believe that this is a valid way to look at this. So social scientists have spent a lot of time looking at the effects of our body language or other people's body language on judgments. And we make sweeping judgments and inferences from body language. And those judgments can predict really meaningful life outcomes, like who we hire or promote, who we ask out on a date. For example, Nalini Ambady, a researcher at Tufts University, shows that when people watch 30-second soundless clips of real physician-patient interactions, their judgments of the physician's niceness predict whether or not that physician will be sued. So it doesn't have to do so much with whether or not that physician was incompetent, but do we like that person and how they interacted? Even more dramatic, Alex Todorov at Princeton has shown us that judgments of political candidates' faces in just 1 second predict 70% of US Senate and gubernatorial race outcomes. And even, let's go digital, emoticons used well in online negotiations can lead you to claim more value from that negotiation. If you use them poorly, bad idea, right? So when we think of nonverbals, we think of how we judge others, how they judge us, and what the outcomes are. We tend to forget, though, the other audience that's influenced by our nonverbals, and that's ourselves. We are also influenced by our nonverbals, our thoughts and our feelings and our physiology. So what nonverbals am I talking about? I'm a social psychologist. I study prejudice, and I teach at a competitive business school. So it was inevitable that I would become interested in power dynamics. I became especially interested in nonverbal expressions of power and dominance.
From our orchards in Southern Oregon to your kitchen table, Royal Riviera pears are
and what are nonverbal expressions of power and dominance? Well, This is what they are. So in the animal kingdom, they are about expanding. So you make yourself big, you stretch out, you take up space, you're basically opening up. It's about opening up. And this is true across the animal kingdom. It's not just limited to primates, and humans do the same thing. So they do this both when they have power sort of chronically, and also when they're feeling powerful in the moment. And this one is especially interesting because it really shows us how universal and old these expressions of power are. This expression, which is known as pride, Jessica Tracy has studied, she shows that people who are born with sight and people who are congenitally blind do this when they win at a physical competition. So when they cross the finish line and they've won, it doesn't matter if they've never seen anyone do it, they do this. So the arms up in the V, the chin is slightly lifted. What do we do when we feel powerless? We do exactly the opposite. We close up, we wrap ourselves up, we make ourselves small. We don't want to bump into the person next to us. So again, both animals and humans do the same thing. And this is what happens when you put together high and low power. So what we tend to do when it comes to power is that we complement the other's nonverbals. So if someone's being really powerful with us, we tend to make ourselves smaller. We don't mirror them, we do the opposite of them. So I'm watching this behavior in the classroom, and what do I notice? I notice that MBA students really exhibit the full range of power nonverbals. So you have people who are like caricatures of alphas, like really coming into the room. They get right into the middle of the room before class even starts, like they really want to occupy space. When they sit down, they're sort of spread out. They raise their hands like this. You have other people who are virtually collapsing when they come in. As soon as they come in, you see it. You see it on their faces and their bodies, and they sit in their chair and they make themselves tiny, and they go like this when they raise their hand. I noticed a couple of things about this. One, you're not going to be surprised. It seems to be related to gender. So women are much more likely to do this kind of thing than men. Women feel chronically less powerful than men, so this is not surprising. But the other thing I noticed is that it also seemed to be related to the extent to which the students were participating and how well they were participating. And this is really important in the MBA classroom because participation counts for half the grade. So business schools have been struggling with this gender grade gap. You get these equally qualified women and men coming in, and then you get these differences in grades, and it seems to be partly attributable to participation. So I started to wonder, okay, so you have these people coming in like this and they're participating. Is it possible that we could get people to fake it, and would it lead them to participate more? So my main collaborator, Dana Carney, who's at Berkeley, and I really wanted to know, can you fake it till you make it? Like, can you do this just for a little while and actually experience a behavioral outcome that makes you seem more powerful? So we know that our nonverbals govern how other people think and feel about us. There's a lot of evidence, but our question really was, do our nonverbals govern how we think and feel about ourselves? There's some evidence that they do. So, for example, when we smile when we feel happy, but also when we're forced to smile by holding a pen in our teeth like this, it makes us feel happy. So it goes both ways. When it comes to power, it also goes both ways. So when you feel powerful, you're more likely to do this, but it's also possible that when you pretend to be powerful, you are more likely to actually feel powerful. So the second question really was, so we know that our minds change our bodies, but is it also true that our bodies change our minds? And when I say minds, in the case of the powerful, what am I talking about? So I'm talking about thoughts and feelings and the sort of physiological things that make up our thoughts and feelings. And in my case, that's hormones. I look at hormones. So what do the minds of the powerful versus the powerless look like? So powerful people tend to be, not surprisingly, more assertive and more confident, more optimistic. They actually feel that they're going to win even at games of chance. They also tend to be able to think more abstractly. So there are a lot of differences. They take more risks. There are a lot of differences between powerful and powerless people. Physiologically, there also are differences on two key hormones, testosterone, which is the dominance hormone, and cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So what we find is that high power alpha males in primate hierarchies have high testosterone and low cortisol. And powerful and effective leaders also have high testosterone and low cortisol. So what does that mean? When you think about power, people tended to think only about testosterone because that was about dominance. But really, power is also about how you react to stress. So do you want the high power leader that's dominant, high on testosterone, but really stress reactive? Probably not, right? You want the person who's powerful and assertive and dominant, but not very stress reactive, the person who's laid back. So we know that in primate hierarchies, if an alpha needs to take over, if an individual needs to take over an alpha role sort of suddenly, within a few days, that individual's testosterone has gone up significantly and his cortisol has dropped significantly. So we have this evidence, both that the body can shape the mind, at least at the facial level, and also that role changes can shape the mind. So what happens, okay, you take a role change, what happens if you do that at a really minimal level, like this tiny manipulation, this tiny intervention? For 2 minutes, you say, I want you to stand like this, and it's gonna make you feel more powerful. So this is what we did. We decided to bring people into the lab and run a little experiment. And these people adopted for 2 minutes either high power poses or low power poses. And I'm just going to show you 5 of the poses, although they took on only 2. So here's one, a couple more. This one has been dubbed the Wonder Woman by the media. Here are a couple more. So you can be standing or you can be sitting. And here are the low power poses. So you're folding up, you're making yourself small. This one is very low power. When you're touching your neck, you're really kind of protecting yourself. So this is what happens. They come in, they spit into a vial. We, for 2 minutes, say, you need to do this or this. They don't look at pictures of the poses. We don't want to prime them with the concept of power. We want them to be feeling power, right? So 2 minutes they do this. We then ask them, how powerful do you feel on a series of items? And then we give them an opportunity to gamble. And then we take another saliva sample. That's it. That's the whole experiment. So this is what we find. Risk tolerance, which is the gambling. What we find is that when you're in the high power pose condition, 86% of you will gamble. When you're in the low power pose condition, only 60%. And that's a pretty whopping significant difference. Here's what we find on testosterone. From their baseline when they come in, high power people experience about a 20% increase, and low power people experience about a 10% decrease. So again, 2 minutes and you get these changes. Here's what you get on cortisol. High power people experience about a 25% decrease, and the low power people experience about a 15% increase. So 2 minutes lead to these hormonal changes that configure your brain to basically be either assertive, confident, and comfortable, or really stress reactive, and feeling sort of shut down. And we've all had that feeling, right? So it seems that our nonverbals do govern how we think and feel about ourselves. So it's not just others, but it's also ourselves. Also, our bodies change our minds. But the next question, of course, is, can power posing for a few minutes really change your life in meaningful ways? So this is in the lab, it's this little task, it's just a couple of minutes. Where can you actually apply this, which we cared about, of course. And so we think it's really what matters, where you want to use this is evaluative situations, like social threat situations. Where are you being evaluated? Either by your friends, like for teenagers, is at the lunchroom table. It could be, for some people, it's speaking at a school board meeting. It might be giving a pitch or giving a talk like this or doing a job interview. We decided that the one that most people could relate to, because most people had been through, was the job interview. So we published these findings, and the media are all over it, and they say, okay, so this is what you do when you go in for the job interview, right? So we were, of course, horrified and said, oh my God, no, that's not what we meant at all, for numerous reasons. No, don't do that. Again, this is not about you talking to other people, it's you talking to yourself. What do you do before you go into a job interview? You do this. Right? You're sitting down, you're looking at your iPhone or your Android, not trying to leave anyone out. You're looking at your notes, you're hunching up, making yourself small, when really what you should be doing maybe is this, like in the bathroom right? Do that, find 2 minutes. So that's what we want to test, okay? So we bring people into a lab and they do either high or low power poses again. They go through a very stressful job interview. It's 5 minutes long. They are being recorded. They're being judged also. And the judges are trained to give no nonverbal feedback. So they look like this. Like, imagine this is the person interviewing you. So for 5 minutes, nothing. And this is worse than being heckled. People hate this. It's what Marianne LaFrance calls standing in social quicksand. So this really spikes your cortisol. So this is the job interview we put them through because we really wanted to see what happened. We then have these coders look at these tapes, 4 of them. They're blind to the hypothesis. They're blind to the conditions. They have no idea who's been posing in what pose. And they end up looking at these sets of tapes and they say, oh, we want to hire these people, all the high power posers. We don't want to hire these people. We also evaluate these people much more positively overall. But what's driving it? It's not about the content of the speech. It's about the presence that they're bringing to the speech. We also, because we rate them on all these variables related to sort of competence, like how well structured is the speech? How good is it? What are their qualifications? No effect on those things. This is what's affected. These kinds of things. People are bringing their true selves, basically. They're bringing themselves. They bring their ideas, but as themselves, with no, residue over them. So this is what's driving the effect or mediating the effect. So when I tell people about this, that our bodies change our minds and our minds can change our behavior and our behavior can change our outcomes, they say to me, it feels fake, right? So I said, fake it till you make it. Like, it's not me. Like, I don't want to get there and then still feel like a fraud. I don't want to feel like an imposter. I don't want to get there only to feel like I'm not supposed to be here. And that really resonated with me because I want to tell you a little story about being an imposter and feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. When I was 19, I was in a really bad car accident. I was thrown.
Do you want me to wait, Amanda? Okay.
Okay, go ahead. I'm ready.
Okay, Annie. That's okay. Okay, so this is her personal story now.
Thrown out of a car, rolled several times. I was thrown from the car, and I woke up in a head injury rehab ward, and I had been withdrawn from college. And I learned that my IQ had dropped by 2 standard deviations, which was very traumatic. I knew my IQ because I had identified with being smart, and I had been called gifted as a child. So I'm taken out of college. I keep trying to go back. They say, you're not going to finish college. Like, just, there are other things for you to do, but that's not going to work out for you. So I really struggled with this. And I have to say, having your identity taken from you, your core identity, and for me, it was being smart, having that taken from you, there's nothing that leaves you feeling more powerless than that. So I felt entirely powerless. I worked and worked and worked, and I got lucky and worked and got lucky and worked. Eventually, I graduated from college. It took me 4 years longer than my peers. And I convinced someone, my angel advisor, Susan Fisk, to take me on. And so I ended up at Princeton, and I was like, I am not supposed to be here. I am an imposter. And the night before my first year talk, and the first year talk at Princeton is a 20-minute talk to 20 people. That's it. I was so afraid of being found out the next day that I called her and said, I'm quitting. She was like, you are not quitting, because I took a gamble on you and you're staying. You're going to stay, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to fake it. You're going to do every talk that you ever get asked to do. You're just going to do it and do it and do it, even if you're terrified and just paralyzed and having an out-of-body experience, until you have this moment where you say, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. Like, I have become this. I am actually doing this. So that's what I did. 5 years in grad school, a few years, I'm at Northwestern. I moved to Harvard. I'm at Harvard. I'm not really thinking about it anymore, but for a long time I had been thinking, not supposed to be here, not supposed to be here. So at the end of my first year at Harvard, a student who had not talked in class the entire semester, who I had said, look, you got to participate or else you're going to fail, came into my office. I really didn't know her at all. And she came in totally defeated, and she said, I'm not supposed to be here. And that was the moment for me, because two things happened. One was that I realized, oh my gosh, I don't feel like that anymore. I don't feel that anymore, but she does, and I get that feeling. And the second was, she is supposed to be here. Like, she can fake it. She can become it. So he's like, yes, you are. You are supposed to be here, and tomorrow you're going to fake it. You're going to make yourself powerful, and, you're going to... and you're going to go into the classroom, and you are going to give the best comment ever, And she gave the best comment ever. And people turned around, they were like, oh my God, I didn't even notice her sitting there, She comes back to me months later, and I realized that she had not just faked it till she made it. She had actually faked it till she became it. So she had changed. And so I want to say to you, don't fake it till you make it. Fake it till you become it. It's not do it enough until you actually become it and internalize. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. Tiny tweaks can lead to big changes. So this is 2 minutes. 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Before you go into the next stressful evaluative situation, for 2 minutes, try doing this in the elevator, in a bathroom stall, at your desk behind closed doors. That's what you want to do. Configure your brain to cope the best in that situation. Get your testosterone up, get your cortisol down. Don't leave that situation feeling like, oh, I didn't show them who I am. Leave that situation feeling like, oh, I really feel like I got to say who I am and show who I am. So I want to ask you first, both to try power posing, and also I want to ask you to share this science, because this is simple. I don't have ego involved in this. Give it away, share it with people, because the people who can use it the most are the ones with no resources and no technology and no status and no power. Give it to them, because they can do it in private. They need their bodies, privacy, and 2 minutes, and it can significantly change the outcomes of their life. Thank you.
Yeah, so really cool. I've seen that before, and I really like it, because in yoga, essentially what we're doing is these different poses that bring different feelings, like even the warrior pose. I mean, we could call it something else, but the fact that we call it the warrior pose, and we take up space, our arms are out, and we even give the cue to reach across. So not just hold them in the same space, but reach beyond. I can't. Why do we need to do?
Gus is asking for something to eat, and I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Can you make the fish?
Oh yeah, fish.
You have to go.
No, Dad's gonna make some fish for Grandma. Grams is hungry.
Okay.
And there's already rice, so we just have to heat it. We have just put fish in the air fryer. It cooks in 4 minutes or something. Do you guys have an air fryer? Yeah, so handy. So anyway, we in yoga we do these poses, these big poses, these not just that, but not just empowering poses, but also just bowing, hands in prayer. They're reverent, they're spiritually minded type of poses, child's pose. You know, even the names are suggestive of these different feelings that we can invoke, right? So I feel like that with that practice of it, we can have an effect on our mind. We can influence our behavior through this kind of consistent practice and consistent suggestions that our physical body makes to our inner self. Yeah. And then another really cool part of this idea is the somatic, using the somatics to bring peace, to regulate the nervous system. And this is what probably you're more familiar with, because this is therapy related, right, Amanda? So somatic experience can help to restore balance to your nervous system. You can do it every day. And they give just a few examples, like balancing your weight evenly on your feet, releasing tension in your neck, because that's usually where stress is held, especially for people who sit at their desks for long periods of time. I'm using your own hands to maybe self-massage, or manipulating your own soft tissue, targeting a certain area, or maybe bringing your hands to your belly or your chest to help you connect to your breath, to help you calm down your tummy, those kinds of things. So those are pretty simple. And I remember actually using just my feet on the ground to suggest getting grounded when I would feel stress or feel like I'm spiraling. I'm just reminding myself to feel my feet on the ground and connect to the earth, to literally feel grounded, right? So these are all examples of simple somatic experiences that have been used in therapy for a while now. But it also suggests that same kind of effect that a yoga practice can have when it's delivered to that intent. Of course, the teacher is the one that sets that tone, right? Because it can have the opposite effect. A yoga practice, if it's taught a certain way, can create more stress, or can not have as therapeutic as an effect as it can, right? Depending on how it's delivered. Okay, so that's that point. So vairagya is the next idea. It's detachment from the results of that practice. So yes, we're doing this yoga practice, breathing, getting grounded, being mindful, but we do it without being overly concerned or overly attached to the effects. We kind of just see how it goes. We let ourselves be pleasantly surprised by the outcomes of our practice. Let me just plug in. And it's important to have that quality of detachment, because detachment can kind of set us up for disappointment or discouragement. And also, a lot of times people become attached to external outcomes, and they may pass over all the internal benefits. Not usually, because it's hard to do, but it can happen. Or they could get injured because they become more physical focused, too much, like on the maybe losing weight, or changing their body, changing their figure, or having their goal as external, too external. So it's about managing our expectations, and there's so many different factors that can influence the one's intention on why they're practicing. But we need to remember that the objective is to bring unity within, to connect to truth, to connect to your deeper realities and your identity. And when we become detached from outer expectations, we can take the pressure off of ourselves, and we can appreciate the inner results or the inner discoveries, because it becomes a path of discovery. Like so many times I learned things that I didn't expect to learn during a yoga class. So leave yourself open for those wonderful surprises, and it becomes more of a practice of discovery as opposed to having a really set expectation or set outcome in mind, and that if you don't get that, then there's no point, right? So we want to be open to discovering what the yoga practice will bring to us. And then, of course, we have to practice mindfully, again, intelligently, and in ways that are harmonious with the basic yoga principles, which we're going to go over pretty soon, probably in the next week or so. So yoga is a process of self-discovery and self-transformation. The outcomes are personal, but can translate to all aspects of our lives, physical, mental, and emotional. Our ability to handle stress can improve, and when we can manage our emotions and act with more equanimity, it can also help our relationships. So Desikachar says the true measure of change through yoga is in how our practice helps our relationships. Right? We can be, and it makes sense, if we can be more peaceful, we can get along better with others. If we feel more settled in ourselves, we are less in conflict. If we're less conflict with ourselves, we're less in conflict with others. And for some reason I put page 76, so let me read that to you. I'm sure I had a reason. So page 76 says, practices effort toward a steady and tranquil mind. Let us take whatever comes as prasad, as a gift from God. Let us remain calm and steady in the face of both prosperity and misfortune. We must not lose our vital energy in this constant action and reaction to everyone around us. But how? How to remain unaffected by the waves of life. This is called spiritual practice. I always say that one of the best ways to learn no reaction is through silence. When we are anxious, angry, tense, or frustrated, we tend to say things which we later regret. We tend to let our words fuel the reaction in our hearts. So let us learn the power of silence. Silence on the outside can lead to silence on the inside. Yeah. All right. So the next point of discussion has to do with Purusha and Prakriti. Right. So we just finished talking about devotional practice and non-attachment. The next set of ideas have to do with, let me find that place, with a more detailed discussion of Samadhi. And in order to talk about that, we need to cover the two ideas of Purusha and Prakriti. So Purusha is the true self within us. Transcending being able to overcome what's impermanent, and to realize the part of us that is permanent, the essential part of ourselves. So we have to acknowledge that, of course, that we need to provide for our material needs, right? You need to work, like you said, you didn't really want to work, but you know that you need to, right? Same with me. So this is a fact of life, but we must remember to keep a balance so that we don't lose our essential identity in that process of trying to just get through providing for ourselves. So we need to keep a balance of that. And then the Prakriti is the material world, or another way is our physical body or our physical existence, right? And it's all of the physical world around us that we see. That is all Prakriti. So what's that got to do with Samadhi? Well, Samadhi is kind of weeding through the Prakriti, but also using the Prakriti, using the material world to get to the Purusha, to get to the deeper self. Okay, so yoga prepares the mind, calms the mind, and quiets the vrittis. Remember, the vrittis are the little fluctuations in our minds. It can be anxiety, it can be fear, it can be stress, it can be whatever, disappointment, all those things that pass through our minds. So yoga, through the practice of yoga, hopefully we calm all that stuff down, and then the mind is prepared to practice samadhi. Samadhi is how we get back to the Purusha, how we get back to our essential self. And there's two stages of samadhi. There's samprajnata samadhi and asamprajnata samadhi. First, this is a lot of ideas. You want me to, do you have any questions? No, okay. All right, so samprajnata samadhi is a technique. So don't think of it as anything really mysterious or super esoteric, like way out there. It's just a technique to travel through your layers of consciousness. Okay, so we have 4 stages, and it goes from gross or from more prakriti focused to the subtle, and then finally to the bliss or the asmita samadhi, that place of dissolution where it's more just pure consciousness or spirit. You can also think of it that way. So it's a type of a meditation. It's a meditation technique. And what you do at the first stage, it's called vitarka, is you choose an object to meditate on. Like in this book, he describes using Ganesh, which is the elephant, as his object of meditation. So in this first part, he's looking at the elephant and he's focusing on every detail, the curve of the shapes, the colors, every little detail that he can, and he's just super focused, right? So that's on the gross or the material level. And then as he's focusing on those details, he becomes more tuned into what Ganesh represents. So Ganesh represents clearing the path in front of you for prosperity, for progress, for growth. And if you think about it, it makes sense. In India, they used elephants literally to clear land. So Ganesh, the elephant, became associated with that process of clearing the way, making a path. So in the second stage of this meditation, he becomes more aware of the purpose or the meaning of Ganesh, and then you start to ponder those ideas, and maybe ideas come into his head. Maybe he remembers times in his life when that was significant, or maybe in the present moment, what parts of his life are getting cleared out so that he can progress to the next level or next phase of his life. So that's the second part of the meditation. The next part is when the thinking mind, the everyday mind, just is quiet, and it's just a feeling of bliss, of joy, because your mind is free. Your mind is free of worry and concerns, and the daily life mental activity is dissolved, and you're just feeling relaxed and at ease. So that's the third stage. Then the fourth stage is that it's like a diving deep. The way that I feel how I feel it, how I experience it is when you go into the deep part of the ocean, and it seems like it's going to go on forever, almost like the abyss. It's super deep, but it's not scary. It's just quiet, and it's full and empty at the same time. So it's like that's feeling of a deepening knowledge of yourself in the process of self-realization. The external world becomes an expression of your own personality. You just kind of feel very present and very aware. It's a high state of awareness, but it's not a stressful awareness. It's a quiet and a peaceful awareness, and where you feel infinite. So that's the 4 stages. And it mimics the process of just traveling from the material world to Purusha, from Prakriti to Purusha. Okay, questions about that? Does that sound, well, how's that sound to you? Are you interested in that process at all? Curious?
Yeah, curious, I'd say. It's interesting. I don't think I'm interested, but I find it interesting,
Yeah.
with them,
Yeah. And I mean, it could be a really powerful tool for if you just really need to quiet your mind. If the mind is just running wild, to find something to focus on. And it doesn't have to be a statue. It can be a picture. It can be a piece of art. It can be, some people will meditate on even a picture of Jesus Christ, or of their guru, their teacher, or a swami, one of the wise men. And then, first you're noticing the detail, and then you're going into what they represent, maybe what you learn from them, what their significant role is in your life. And then you go into that quiet state, and then finally just experiencing your pure presence. So the second part, asamprajnata samadhi, is just when people who can already go there to that deep state and hang out there. Like they can go into meditation and they can go to that deep part of themselves. They've already learned how to quiet their mind, and so they go and spend some time there in that deep state, right? And they can get there through breathing, through what else does it say? Breathing and other techniques. Yeah. So, okay. All right. So then we can go into the discussion of the 3 systems of yoga. So Patanjali, the guy who originally put together the sutras, he didn't create them. He just put it together, organized it. He talks about 3 systems. So for those who already have a calm and pure mind, this is where he talks about breath control and everything. Samadhi is reached through practice of non-attachment, breath control, concentration on enlightened beings or inner light, or meditating on spiritually uplifting objects. So that's one system of yoga. You just go right to it. Second system is Kriya Yoga, which we talked about, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Tapas, Svadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhana. So discipline is tapas, meaning that it takes work, it takes effort. Tapas is actually heat. And then Svadhyaya is self-study, and also study of spiritual material, spiritual books like scripture. And then surrender to the Supreme Being, like that's Ishvara Pranidhana, where it's similar to abhyasa. It's that devotional practice. So having that element of devotion, of dedication in your approach to the practice, so that it becomes you make it an important part of your life. right? Just like spiritual practice. Then the other system is Ashtanga Yoga. And that is the 8-limbed path, which is what we're going to spend more of our time on in detail. It has 8 elements, yamas, which are restraints. Have you heard of these before? No? Oh, new material for you. Okay, yay. So yamas, they're like how should I just, they're like principles to live by. Yama is like the first one is ahimsa, which is non-harming. So don't hurt yourself and don't hurt others when you're practicing, basically. That's how we apply it to the yoga practice. So there's 5 yamas and there's 5 niyamas. And then there's asana, which is postures, pranayama, which is breath control, pratyahara is sense withdrawal, so kind of shutting down the outside world, like closing your eyes is one way. Or when they go into those pods, I know Christopher and Sabrina like to do it, where they go into a water, a suspension that has beads in it, some kind of beads in it, and you float, and it's completely dark and you can't hear anything, you can't see anything. That's up level. That's a super high level of sense withdrawal. And then dharana is concentration, dhyana is meditation, samadhi is absorption, like we talked about before. So that's going to be where we're going to spend a lot of time on the 8-limbed path. We're going to take them one by one and kind of talk about what they mean, and then also how we can apply them to yoga and how we can apply them to our lives. So, questions? No? Okay. So that's it. That's our lecture for today. And then description of Samadhi starts on page 90 if you want to read that. And then after that, I want you to think about who is Ishvara, because they have quite a few pages, several pages describing Ishvara in different ways. So I want you to think about that. Okay? Okay.
Okay.
It's good to be with you.
Thank you. Thanks for the lecture.
You're welcome. Thanks for your attention and your presence. And I love you very much.
Love you too.
Okay. So I better go out there. I hear a lot of ruckus.
Okay. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow at 12:30 your time?
Yeah.
Okay, Annie. I love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.